G'day, I'm Melissa Shannon, founder of Digital Scrapbooking HQ.com, and today I'm here to create a scrapbook page from some vintage photos. I mean, they're from 1986, so is that vintage now? I guess it is. So we're going to start with the organizer. I'm going to import some scanned negatives that I scanned myself at home. Unfortunately, based in Australia, we don't have a great lot of options for negative scanning. But if you're in the US or Canada, Forever could do this for you. So let's go to import these photos. Let's choose from camera or card reader. And let's actually put the card in to the computer. That'll probably help. So I've plugged that in and we're going to choose refresh list, and it's going to import all of these images. I'm going to choose my location, my home base for my photos. Okay, I'm going to rename, I'm going to leave these files. I usually rename them to the shot date, but there's no point doing that with these because these are all scanned images. And I'm going to, after copying, delete the originals. That way I'll know which ones I've imported. They've already gone off there. So let's click Get Media. Now it's time for me to edit this photo in Photoshop Elements Editor. Just right clicking and then selecting Edit in Photoshop Elements Editor, and now it's opened up. I've also taken the time to write out my journaling in Notepad. I sometimes do that when I think when I am kind of processing photos, importing them, or doing something else that requires a bit of my computer's time. And then I click on File, New, and then I choose from the new dialog box the 12 by 12 scrapbook layout. You'd click on Presets, Scrapbooking 12 by 12, and then I'm just going to save it as a Photoshop document so that I'll be able to edit it later. So I just found a photo of myself dancing in later life, also as an angel. I thought that was a nice way to come full circle. And I'm just opening up these photos and looking through. You notice when I opened those that Adobe Camera Raw came up. Sometimes that will appear if you're working with RAW files or some JPEGs. And all you need to do is select the photos you want to open and click Open Files. If you don't want to go ahead and do any editing in Adobe Camera Raw. I tend to do most of my editing in Photoshop Elements. And now I've selected a group photo and I'm dragging that on, and then I'm just resizing these photos. Because I've dragged them on from the photo bin onto the layout, they are smart objects. So that means I can resize them up and down as many times as I like. It makes your overall file size a bit bigger, but for me it's worth it because I do change my mind. And pretty soon I've decided that I want to go with a photo that's just of me. And I've resized both of them. I crop them down and resize them to make them both be about equal size. So now it's just a matter of creating a text box and pasting in the journaling. I changed it to my favorite handwriting font. And now I'm just going to adjust the font size and try and make it work with the two photos and quite a lot of journaling. And then it'll be time to hunt for supplies in Photoshop Elements Organizer. So the first thing I do is I change the catalogue over to my supplies catalogue, and then I just do a simple search for any files that contain angel or dance and see what kind of supplies I have. I had a bit of a browse around, look for fairy as well. And then I remembered I had a Maggie Holmes kit called Gather, and I knew that it had some things to do with dance too. So in order to find my Maggie Holmes supplies, I just did a quick search for anything with MH in the file name, and that brought up all of her supplies because they're named. The AC Digital's team names everything very nicely, and it makes it a lot easier to find supplies. So then I just dragged any supplies that I like the look of from my organizer over to my editor. And I probably won't use all of these supplies, but it's good to have them there. And it helps me to get an idea of how large they are, because you'll notice in that view, everything tiles up beautifully, and you can't really have a concept of how big things are. So while I'm here, I'm looking at papers, I'm looking at alphabets, and I'm just dragging things on to try to see what will look good. So I love a lot of these pattern papers, but I was feeling like it was quite busy. So you'll see me here playing around with cropping down just a plain part for behind my journaling, or using a completely painted background. And I ended up getting rid of most of the ballerinas. I always struggle with that because I'm like, oh, this is a dance page, so it's perfect to use pictures of ballerinas. But then I've got 2 pictures of me dancing on there already, so it kind of seems redundant. So I went with my old favorite, which are hearts and flowers, because, well, I love dancing, so hence the love heart. And, I love flowers, so I'm always going to put them on a layout. So here I'm just playing around with where to position all the embellishments and moving the layers up and down with the shortcut keys, Control Shift left square bracket and Control Shift right square bracket. So those square bracket keys can be used to move your layers up and down through the layer stack. So if you've got a flower and it's hidden behind everything else on the page, press Control Shift close square brackets on the PC, or Command Shift close square brackets on the Mac, to move it right up to the top. I love using keyboard shortcuts because that's just how my brain works. But you don't need to do that. And I just thought I'd share that one. And here what I'm doing is I'm just looking through and trying to find some numbers, because I was thinking of putting my age, like 4 years old and then 23 years old. But I wasn't super happy with how that was looking. There was too much yellow on one side, and then the 3 was very busy, and I tried making them smaller. Anyway, so I fiddled around with that, and I'm pretty sure I deleted that. And then now what I'm doing is just adjusting the levels on the 4-year-old photograph, just to brighten up the look of that. And then you can see here I ended up just putting the date in text using the type tool on my layout. And at this point I start adding my handy dandy shadows. I love One Little Bird's shadows. Also using a guideline to help me adjust my photos to be at the same height, and just really seeing how everything looks. And at this point I'm pretty happy with how the whole layout's coming together. Just fiddling with that top row of pearls and the paper. And then just doing a little bit of editing on my journaling to just add when I actually made my layout, because sometimes that's interesting as well. We're covering a big span of time on this layout. So here I took a little break and came back to the page and decided I wanted to include that really gorgeous rose line drawn paper. But again, I thought it was too busy for the page really. So then I had the idea to make the pink paper go behind the photos as well as the journaling. So I adjusted the mask, the layer mask for that pink layer, just to make it work, and that really helped it look less busy but allowed me to get away with using that favourite paper that I wanted to include. So now I am just trying to desperately add more elements to my page because I know I'm such a simple scrapper, and I often want to just try adding more to see if it'll make things look better. So the next step in the process is to find an alpha that I can use for my title. So I'm just having a look in my favorites and my to use, because that's where I can often find, I keep little albums of supplies I like to use. And then I'm just going in and selecting all the letters I'll need for my title, which in this case is very simple. It just says dance. And I wanted to use these cursive style, calligraphy style letters. So I'm just dragging those on, and then Photoshop Elements just puts them, when you drag them up, it'll put them in the center of the page above the layer that you drag them onto. So I just needed to get them all up to the top. My favorite shortcut, Control Shift close bracket. And then I just added a bit of a shadow, thanks again to One Little Bird's Shadow Like Me. And then I need to change the order these letters are in so that they overlap in a bit more of a normal kind of way. So what I'm doing here is I put each letter, the left letter goes behind the next letter coming up on the right. So as you would write, it makes it look a bit more realistic. So for D, A's on top of D, N's on top of A, etc., etc. I hope that makes sense. So now I'm just playing around with a few different title positions to see with what works, and I like it over on this cluster. So now I have to play around with the journaling. I often end up really struggling because I write quite a lot and then I'm trying to squeeze it onto a page with a few photos. The struggle is real. That's one thing I do love about digital scrapbooking. I can write as much as I want, and I can edit it and I can move it around. I can change fonts and sizes to make it all fit on the page, and I don't have to rewrite it 5 times. So now the layout's basically done. I'm just doing a little few tweaks to make sure you can see the dates and to make sure everything lines up. And then because this is part of a featured layout for Layout a Day, I'm going to just make a note of which kits I used and who were the designers so that I can give credit to them. So in this case, it was Flurgs Believe in Magic Fairy Dust Alphabet. It was Kristen Cronin Barrow Peace and Joy Fairy Lights, and Maggie Holmes Gather was most of the rest of the papers and embellishments. So I used a few different designers on this page, and it's fun to dive into the stash. And then I just copy and paste my journaling into the description metadata, and I also pop the credits into the description metadata, because on many forums, if you've got metadata, it will automatically put that in the description. That is how this layout came to be. I hope you like these process videos. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see more digital scrapbook process videos. And if you'd like to learn how to make layouts from scratch like this, you want to check out my class, Digi Scrap from Scratch, where I teach you the techniques that I used in this layout and many others.
Thanks so much for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about digital scrapbooking or Photoshop elements, head to digitalscrapbookinghq.com.